Right now, Dota has one of the weirdest trends going on that I've seen in my over 10 years of playing the game. Usually when a hero is abused in pro Dota, it's seen really prevalently in all brackets, unless it's a hero like Io that has a pretty high skill cap. But right now, Dawnbreaker is crazy prevalent in DPC, and although it's super easy and can be played in any position, people just aren't picking it in pubs. I'm going to break down why you should be picking this hero in your pubs and kind of the overview of how to play the hero. Now this isn't going to be a full Dawnbreaker guide, I'm just going to explain why you should be picking the hero and kind of the overview to get you started. But if you are interested in learning how to play new heroes, not only Dawnbreaker, subscribe to the channel because the next video is going to talk about my method for learning new heroes, and by using this method you're going to be able to skip this initial step of learning a new hero where you have a low win rate when you're just learning the basics. In 3 of the 6 DPC regions right now, Dawnbreaker's in the top 5 of most picked heroes. Even though she doesn't have a great win rate here, trust me, these teams would not be picking her if she was not good. But if you do need some convincing that this hero does work in high level games, this comes straight from Dota Pro Tracker, which tracks pub games that have professional players in them, and as you can see, even at the highest level, this hero shows up in every single role. And barring the carry position, it has over a 53% win rate in each of the other roles, which is just insane. And that's not even to mention the whopping 58% win rate that position 4 Dawn has right now in these pro level pubs. But there's a lot of heroes that are good in pub games. This isn't anything that's new. These win rates aren't the highest that I've seen. Even right now, it's probably not the highest out there. But the weird thing comes in when we start to look at every other bracket. Now this graph breaks down the pick, ban, and win rates of Dawnbreaker in every MMR. So keeping in mind what we just talked about, looking at the pick rate here, we would expect this graph to be way more even than it ends up being. But for some reason, the lower in MMR you go, the less often this hero is picked. And my initial guess would be, since this hero is so strong in pubs, maybe it's just banned more in these lower MMRs. But if we add the ban rates to the chart, you can see that they also go down with MMR. So then I was thinking maybe I'm just completely wrong about this hero, it's not actually strong in pubs at all. Then finally, when we add the win rates back in, we can see that no matter what bracket you're in, this hero is at an over 52% win rate. And this is the only graph that doesn't strictly go down with MMR, it actually goes up in the middle of it. So the only real answer here is this hero is just getting completely overlooked in lower MMRs. It checks every box for being an easy and consistent hero to play in pubs that will just print you MMR. It's a strength hero, so it's naturally bulky, has some mobility, has a global ability, so even if your positioning isn't great, that ability will help you make up for that. You're also an insanely strong lane dominator, which in my opinion is the best thing that you should be looking for right now for strong pub heroes. That's not even mentioning again that you can play this hero in literally any role, so putting in the time to practice it will definitely pay off because as you can see, it's not getting banned or picked that often, so you'll be able to play it pretty much every game no matter where you end up being put on the map. Like I said, this isn't going to be a full hero guide. If you do want something like that, let me know and I can make that. This is a hero that I've played a lot and had a lot of success on, so I'd be happy to make that. But for now, I just want to give you some simple builds that you can follow if you just want to jump into a game and play this right now. So I'm not just going to break down the abilities or anything like that. I'm going to assume you have all those basics covered. The skill builds and item builds for all 3 core positions on this hero are pretty much all the same. Pretty much every lane, every game, you're going to want to go 1-3-1. A big mistake that I see a lot of lower MMR players doing is actually maxing the Q instead of the W. But if you look at how your Q scales, all it's really doing here is lowering the cooldown a tiny bit and increasing the damage bonus on the swipe. But the majority of this damage is still going to be coming from your base auto attack damage, which isn't going to be scaling when you level this up more. So leaving it at 1 point is probably your best bet and just max out the W. After 6, we see everybody picking up their 4th level of hammer, but then off lanes kind of deriving from the norm here by maxing out their Q first, while carry and mids max out their passive. When playing core on this hero, I would suggest for talents picking the 25 Starbreaker damage at level 10, the 50% additional crit at 15, the -1 attacks for your passive at 20, and then definitely the 2 Starbreaker charges at 25. Any of the first 3 talents could go either way depending on the game that you're having. At 25, I'd always take the double Starbreaker charges, but the other ones you can kind of get away with going with either depending on what the game is. For skill builds, we see everybody picking up some kind of mana item first. It looks like it's Soul Ring if you're carry or off lane, and then if you're mid, you can pick up a bottle instead, followed up by Phase Boots and Echo Saber. And in case you didn't know, Echo Saber does proc on your Q spin, and it will apply the slow. And then every role is picking up Shard as soon as it's available. It's incredibly powerful for 2 reasons. The obvious one being granting you magic immunity, letting you dodge some spells or incoming damage. But the other thing that this does is it allows you to always get off your Q unless they have some stun that pierces magic immunity. One of the big things that limits this hero's damage during the mid game if you don't have the Shard is people being able to just cancel this Q whenever they want. Once you pick up the Shard, that's no longer a problem. And then after that, any of these items listed on screen are kind of what you can go for after that, depending on what the game needs, whether you want a Blink Dagger, Deso, if you need an additional magic immunity, you can get BKB right after. Abyssal is really good, AC, kind of anything like that will really just work out for the hero. It doesn't really matter what core position you are. Again, we can group both of these support roles together in skill builds and item builds because they're pretty much the same across both roles. The skill build is pretty similar to the core, but instead we're going to be getting 2 points in our Q and nothing in our passive. Since we're building less damage early on as this role, our Q's additional damage is going to be better since we're not relying as much on our attack damage for this. And also the heal isn't going to be doing as much since we're not going to be hitting as hard. And then even after we hit 6, we're still going to be maxing our W and then our Q and not even worrying about getting a point in our passive passive until level 11. But looking at talents for support, we're going to do pretty much the opposite that we did with core. At 10, we're going to be taking the 15% hammer slow. At 15, we definitely want to take the alt cooldown. At 20, we're going to be taking the additional alt radius. And then 25 is kind of up to you. You're not going to hit this that much on this hero, especially when you're playing position 5. But in a game where you do hit this, you're going to have to make your own decision whether you want the extra damage or if the more utility from your extra W range is going to be more valuable. Our base item build is going to be the same also between these two roles. We're going to be rushing a Holy Locket, and the build up for that is going to be Brown Boots into Arcane Boots into the Locket. This is going to give us a bunch of extra heal on our alt, which is really what we're looking for here, using this alt kind of defensively to turn fights. We're then going to be getting Aghanim Scepter to buff the alt even further, and since with our first two items we're focusing so much on our ultimate, that's why we really want to take the lowering cooldown and increase radius on our alt talents at 15 and 20. After the Scepter, we're again going to focus on getting the Shard. It is super strong even on supports. We're probably not going to be able to find a point to fit our BKB into the build here on support, so it's even more value to get this kind of cheap but short magic immunity. At this point, you're kind of open to building whatever item you need. Most people are getting drums into drum boots, but anything like a Wraith Pact, Solar Crest, Lotus Orb, Mechanism, anything like that can work. Now let's jump into a Dawnbreaker replay and look at the key points that you really need to look out for when you're playing the hero in game. Tip number 1 here is going to come down to the drafting when you decide to pick this hero. This obviously isn't going to really apply to mid lane because you're not going to be laning with anybody, but in either of the side lanes, you want to ideally pick Dawnbreaker with a hero that kind of wants to match Dawnbreaker's early aggression. So for instance, if you're playing position 5, maybe you should pick it when you see that your carry is hovering something like a Bloodseeker, Monkey King, Sven, anything listed here. Or if you're picking it as a position 4, pick it with a 3 that either has some stuns or additional damage or just wants to get kills early. Things like Night Stalker, Viper, Sand King are great examples of this. And then if you're playing carry or offlane, the viable supports kind of overlap here. Things like CM, Marcy, Vengeful Spirit, Witch Doctor, all these heroes enable Dawnbreaker to do an insane amount of damage to dominate pretty much any lane that you can come up against. And then tip number 2 is again going to be looking at this kind of early lane dominance, because this is really where this hero shines. It is great later on because your global ult's amazing and you scale really well, but this hero in lane right now is pretty much the most dominant thing that you're going to see in the game, and you need to make sure that you're not playing it passively. Every chance that you have to be aggressive, you should really be abusing. Sometimes you will lane against something like this, where it's Io and Juggernaut, where Juggernaut has this instant magic immunity, which kind of saves him from anything that we can do aggressively. And then Io has Overcharge, which can make Juggernaut even more unkillable. So some people seeing a lane like this would play it a little bit more passively and just kind of sit back and come out of the lane with very few kills, assists, or deaths. And I'm going to say it right now, if you come out of the lane with less than 3 kills, deaths, or assists, you're definitely doing something wrong on this hero. You'll be amazed what kind of lanes that you can kill. Just for instance, this is me playing Dawnbreaker with a Marcy, and even against this horrendous lane matchup that we have here, we're still not going to sit here and be passive. As soon as we have the opportunity, I'm hit my level 2, I have both my spells. I know Juggernaut doesn't have spin because he just used it to kill the Marcy, so we're going to get super aggressive. And this is Juggernaut that's being saved by the overcharge of Io, and he still just pretty much melts. The other cool thing about this hero is your amazing spells are on such a low cooldown that even when we get this Juggernaut kill, 2 seconds later, we can just keep chasing the Io, and then he's just going to drop 2. You are going to have mana problems on this hero early on. That's why every core position is getting either Soul Ring or a bottle right away. And the reason that's so important to do, as you can see, I get it here ASAP after I get those kills, is because as soon as these heroes come back, we want to jump them again. We don't want to take our foot off the gas in the slightest. So here we are, just a couple waves later, as soon as the Jug actually comes back. And again, as soon as we get the opportunity, we are just going to throw all of our spells. Jug does have spin to get rid of my Q, but here's the other cool thing about Dawnbreaker. On top of doing the most insane damage ever, you are Strength Hero. I have 1000 HP before 3 minutes into the game. I can just not really be afraid of the spin and just stay on the Jug, keep hitting him. And then with the Soul Ring, I'm going to have my spells back up, and then we can just keep jumping him. And even this lane, which is insanely hard to kill, we're just able to dominate. And at this point, 3 minutes in, the Juggernaut's lane is just pretty much grief. And just think about how hard we can dominate a lane that isn't this strong defensively. If you're playing against a hero like PA or Luna, all these heroes that just kind of fall over if you get on top of them, they pretty much just won't have a game, and you're going to get off to an insanely strong start. And then the third thing I want to highlight here is when people play Dawnbreaker, they think of her kind of like a Spectre, since you do have this global ultimate ability where you can just kind of sit back and be out of position and then ult into every fight. And this is probably the best way for you to get as much money as you can, but especially if you're not playing carry, this is the last thing that you ever want to do. You don't want to steal all this safe farm from your carry, because you are a hero that still has a ton to offer even without your ult, and you're going to be best off setting up your own kills rather than just assuming some random person in your pub will set up the kills for you. If every game you're just sitting there hoping that your position 4 or 2 is going to set up these kills for you to ult into, you're going to be really disappointed when you actually get into the game and realize that everybody's just kind of sitting there passively farming and your ult's just going to be sitting off cooldown for half the game. So in times like this where we're pushing towers, I'm actually going to be in position to jump people without having to use my ult. A case like this where our Marcy finds a jump on the Lina, I am still going to ult in. But if this was farther off to the side, closer to me, or I was closer to this initiation, I wouldn't have even had to waste my ult here. and then I could have saved it for jumping back over here when our OD gets jumped or something like that, opposed to if I'm farming this camp right now or shoving out this wave, I would have had to ult in no matter what, and I would not have had the option. Right, and the last thing we're going to look at here is the same thing that I was talking about beforehand. I'm not going to play this hero farming super safely. Me being out here pushing out this side lane is allowing our lifestealer to farm the triangle and our OD to farm the jungle uncontested. Whereas if I was playing super safe, it would be very free for the enemy team to smoke gank us or just to shove in side lanes with no contest, and we would all be getting less farm because I'm going to be stealing some of OD or lifestealer's farm. But instead, since I'm out here making aggressive moves on the map, it's going to force enemies to have to react to what we're doing. As we can see here, the Juggernaut and the mid Lina is actually going to come and gank me here, and this is something that for sure would not happen if I was just farming the jungle. Likely somebody else would have just gotten jumped, and sure, I maybe would have ulted in, but that is not a good use of your ult. When you're ahead like this, you want to be using it aggressively to set up kills and not reactively. The cool thing is, even if I am pushing out this lane and they do smoke gank or OD, then I can use it defensively, but again, giving ourselves options here. Once again, on this gank, I am going to initiate with the ult once this Marcy toss comes in, but like I said, again and again, giving us options. I wouldn't have to use the ult here, there's just a perfect opportunity to use it, so I'm willing to do it. But you are insane to say that this same thing would have happened even if I was farming something defensively. Their heroes would have never grouped up like this. Maybe your Marcy or Dazzle would set up a couple kills like this throughout the game, but relying on them to do 100% of the work there is just not going to end up going well for you. I do appreciate you watching this video all the way through. I hope you found it useful, and I'd love to hear your Dawnbreaker adventures in the comments if you do decide to pick up this hero, or if you do already play the hero, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. If you enjoyed this video, maybe you'll enjoy one of these other two videos that are on screen right now. That's all I got. Thanks.